Oh, I was unmuted, sorry.
I think
Okay,
we arrived.
yeah. Hello, good afternoon, everyone, to this session of the Equity Summit. My name is Dr. Karen Chow, and I am so pleased and honored to be the moderator for this session on global perspectives with Dr. Joanne Wohl and Dr. Elvin Ramos. And if you would allow me the pleasure of introducing our two panelists today, I will do so right now. Dr. Joanne Wohl is the Dean of the School of Business at Medgar Evers College. Dean Wohl has extensive executive leadership experience in higher education, corporate and federal government operations. In 2015, she was awarded recognition by the Network Journal as one of the 25 influential African-American women in business. Dean Wohl's background includes working in multiple federal agencies, academic institutions, IBM, and consulting. In academic institutions, she has been responsible for academic leadership, academic programs, and student affairs. She has launched multiple undergraduate and graduate degree programs. She has taught courses in economics and entrepreneurship. Her skill set includes higher education administration, developing and leveraging strategic partnerships, innovation creation, small business development, disadvantaged business development, and staff development. Dean Wohl is sought after internationally as a keynote speaker on entrepreneurship and economic development. We also have with us today Dr. Elvin T. Ramos. Dr. Ramos serves as the Dean of Social Sciences and Humanities at De Anza College in Cupertino, California, a role that he has held since April 2020. He previously served as Assistant Dean of Academic Affairs and as a member of the teaching faculty in the humanities at the University of District of Columbia Community College. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Global Tassels, with his tenure ending in June 2020 after serving 6 years there. He is the principal owner of Sapphire Global Associates, LLC. In 2006, he received his baccalaureate degree in political science, and in 2007, he received his master's degree in education, both from Adelphi University. And he later studied world history and international development at St. John's University, where he attained his doctoral degree in 2010. So I'm so, as I said, I'm so pleased to be here with you all. Thank you everyone who is here and joining us. And Dr. Wohl and Dr. Ramos, are you ready to proceed with our questions? So I guess I will be asking some questions and then also trying to help keep us on time. I believe that at the end, there will be some time for some questions from the audience and a chat, and then we'll do our closing. So I'm sure the time will go very quickly. Okay, so the first question is for both of you, and we'll have 5 minutes each for both of you for this question. Can you please describe your experience working with students, faculty, and researchers in other countries? And would you please identify the scope of your work and how you got involved with global education? How about Dr. Wohl, if we begin with you? Oh, and I think you're muted, sorry.
I'm muted, yes, and I'm going to put on a timer because I can go on and on. But
yeah, I'll try to. I'll keep time also. I will give you a 1 minute warning. If I give you, how about this? If I give you a thumbs up, that's the 1 minute warning. How about that?
Oh, that is great. That will help me a lot.
Okay.
All right. So my international experience started very early in my career. I literally was in my 20s when I was a senior economist in Tanzania, East Africa. And while I wasn't teaching, I interfaced with university faculty and a diverse group of professionals. So when I returned to the US, I maintained several connections and contacts. The experience literally changed my life and the way I looked at things. When I finally did transition to the academy, it took me a few decades, but when I finally made that transition, I was a believer and a practitioner of peer to peer engagement and working in collaboration with both industry, and this is the important part, with the community. Uh, my involvement with the international faculty, and I got to give my mental props, started with Professor Roger Kaufman. Roger Kaufman is known as the father of performance measurement around the world. In fact, they just named a center after him. He had over 300 books and articles published before he died. He just died, by the way. He was a friend, a mentor, and a colleague. I had him involved in my industry advisory council. Everywhere I went, Roger was there with me. And he taught me how to partner with other faculty. Our very first partnership was in Mexico. He literally took me down to Mexico and shared with me some of the exciting work that he was doing. So that's how someone shepherded me in. But my real drivers are my students. They really get me going. Shortly after I arrived at Medgar Evers College, my students indicated they wanted to travel to China. Now, the base of my students are mostly Caribbean and some Africans and some Latinos. So rarely will you hear that group of students saying they want to go to China. And it took us a minute. And I say that because we had to tell our story over and over and over. And they wanted to study entrepreneurship. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of market in China. They wanted to understand that market. And it's very difficult to understand a market if you don't know the culture, if you've never seen it, if you've never lived it. So we worked for a year in search of funding. And eventually we were funded to study entrepreneurship. To the tune of, I must say, we had 3 different founders, but over $1 million. So we traveled with a group of students and faculty to China twice. You know, the students are very good motivators. And one of my advisors said, if you're going to China, you're on that side of the world, you might as well go to Japan and Thailand. So we went to Japan and Thailand. We went to Kenya 3 times because a lot of my students got their inspirations from some of the businesses. And, you know, Kenya is very tech heavy in innovations. And when the students saw their students and how hard they were working and the kinds of things they were doing, well, it naturally was something that they wanted to focus on. And I'll talk a little bit about that later in our talk. So we also traveled to Italy, Chile, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, all funded by the grant. We also funded 2 international conferences on social entrepreneurship because my students were not just interested in business for the sake of business, but they wanted to help their communities. We also funded a conference on corporate social responsibility, which paid for faculty and students from Chile, Jamaica, and Kenya to attend. Later, faculty published, and by now it was 10 publications, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We have worked together with that group of faculty and published maybe 20 papers. We've authored several articulation agreements, created published case studies, and currently we have a backlog of at least 4 requested articulations from Pakistan, India, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. We now co-host an international conference annually with our UK partners with over 100 academic papers presented from 37 countries. Our students and alumni also co-authored and presented. Now I'm down to a few seconds left on my minute. I'm most proud of my students who really took that experience and drove their businesses. I have one student that has launched his business with Nairobi goods using sourcing Nairobi vendors. So the work we are collaborating on now is with 25 researchers from around the world on a book, The Future of Work and Entrepreneurship for the Underserved. We hope to have it out by March. It's going to be out in May. This journey has been exciting, watching both faculty and students grow as they engage with others globally. They see our differences and our similarities and realize we have much more to gain by working with each other. 5 minutes, 15 seconds.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, I am charged after hearing that. I want to buy that book right now. Okay. Okay, Dr. Ramos, now your turn to answer the same question. Thank you. And I'll keep time. You are muted. Alvin, you're muted.
I
Yep,
am
sorry.
muted. Yes, I am. Thank you, Dr. Roll, and thank you, Dr. Chow. Dr. Roll, I always love hearing your story. It's always inspiring in many ways. And it's just, it gives me some fuel to do more around the world. But, you know, to answer that question, Dr. Chow, it really is, you know, my involvement with global education really started when I was in my doctoral studies at St. John's University. I went to school to study history, but I was very intentional because I wanted to study the history of poverty, right? During that time, the Millennium Development Goals that the UN put out from 2000 to 2014, 2015, we started just starting in terms of what it means for all of us to collectively work in, you know, in international development, right? When I graduated in 2010, I sort of left that behind, going into academic administration and working in different colleges in New York City. But in 2014, I was, you know, I was tapped in a way with other mentors working in different NGOs to start something in addition to many others, whether it's individuals or organizations, to be part of this movement as they end the Millennium Development Goals, because it was going to turn into the Sustainable Development Goals from 2015 to 2030. So at 2014, I decided to put my research and apply it and create an organization called Global Tassels. Global Tassels mission is basically to provide educational opportunities for students who have the academic capability to do well in college, but do not necessarily have the financial capability to afford it. And they don't have access to quality education. So Global Tassels, I formulate the team. I talk to different individuals, mostly from the East Coast, most of the people that I went to school with, former colleagues, friends around the world, and really put my network into this sort of one sort of bus, right, that would drive this organization and start our mission all over. So we started working in India, Haiti, Colombia, Kenya, Philippines, Guatemala, and at the very beginning, Ivory Coast as well. Right now, as I chair the board of Global Tassels, we are working to expand that work with Cambodia and Ghana as well. So during that time, we were doing a lot of capacity building, working with students, bring them into the college that they choose to go to study and complete their programs. We work with researchers, faculty, and other community leaders in order to mentor our students, and also just to provide resources as they go through, you know, giving back to their community or their hometown. So that's really my exposure to global education. And until today, I think I could say the same thing with Dr. Roll, the students and their story. Dr. Roll met some of them before, are really very much inspiring. And, you know, they're in college now and very much going through it the same way we're all going through it during the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roll and Dr. Ramos. I'm very inspiring what you both are sharing, especially in the sense that you are really helping to create networks with, you know, what used to be called, right, underdeveloped countries. And I think that's so exciting that you're both doing that work. So my next question is Dr. Roll, for Dr. Roll. What challenges do you see students abroad will face in regards to the future of workforce? And we'd like to keep this answer to 3 minutes, so I'll also help you keep time on that one.
Okay, so the market that I serve typically, that I've dedicated my career to, is the underserved. That would be minorities, women, those with disabilities, aged folks, those in the protected classes. And I see that as the same challenge as some of the issues in the labor force and the education in developing countries, as you said. But the real issue for all of those groups is that the world and industry is changing faster than the academy. You know, it takes a long time for us to change, and it is hurting our students. Students, in spite of us, will need to focus on the learning process because they will be evolving and transforming for the rest of their working careers. No longer just having one degree going to work. The world is changing fast enough that you have to keep preparing, keep relevant. So also, and this is here for post-COVID graduates, they can assume that they will be entitled to a job. There will be more opportunities for upper level skills, but many of the lower level skill functions will be automated and replicated to AI and other advanced technology. It's coming and it's already here. Accounting is one of my areas that we cover, and they already have accounting covering some of the lower level tasks that they were doing before. So if all you were going to do is a bookkeeper, you would need to upgrade your skills. So the real challenge is to stay relevant, to stay engaged, and keep listening and learning. Those that do so will always have a place either to work or become a creator, a job creator. And I'm big on entrepreneurship. And the reason why is because history has shown us that there are dysfunctions in the labor market. I'm an economist by training. And for whatever reason, we don't need to talk about it here, there is always structural employment and other employment. I don't believe we have to accept that. I shared a story when I did another presentation about a young man in Bangladesh who had MS, and he had to stop school because of his medical condition. He focused. He leveraged technology and a skill set. He eliminated the excuses. He produced a viable solopreneur operation business that allowed his family to build a home. And he did it by bringing the market to him in his village via the internet. He physically could not leave the village. These are the stories of persistence and determination that resonate in the human existence. The fact is that there is a skill gap problem, not a labor market problem.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
I got 30 more seconds.
You got 30 seconds, sorry.
The fact is there, yeah, so I told you that part. I'm almost done. So what we need to do with the students, our challenge is to have enough students tooled up and ready to go for the jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities that will be available to them in the future of work and entrepreneurship. Opportunity is out there. We just have to help get them ready.
Mm-hmm.
3 minutes exactly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roll. Wow. Also, fire answer. I love it. Okay, so next question is for Dr. Ramos, also 3-minute question. Dr. Ramos, can you talk about equity in the global perspective and what is at stake for equity in the global perspective? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Chow. I want to go back to some of the highlighted topics that Dr. Roll brought up, because I do think that, some of the things that she had mentioned are part of, equity in the global perspective, right? When we started Global Tassels, we were aligning it to Sustainable Development Goals number 4, which is access to quality education. And not just quality education, but equitable and inclusive education, right? We all know that access to education is not necessarily equal all over the world. We all know that there are still children today, and quite frankly, in the next 10 more years, that there are millions of children that's not going to have sort of access to school, right? So in a way, one of it is what Dr. Roll is saying, like you could bring and have this pathway to go to bring students to have secondary education, post-secondary education, but often they get stuck in the internship, in that career pathway that they want to go to. A lot of the students that that I'm mentoring right now through Global Tassels, or that we're dealing with, they're all very much studying technical programs, right? And the pandemic has really made these programs sort of take 5 steps back, and a lot of them, of course, living situation, work opportunities, technology, the digital divide is the problem, right? The same problem that we're having here in the United States are sort of like twice as much, right? In the countries such as Kenya, Haiti, and most India and the Philippines. One of the things that I really want to talk about in regards to equity in a global perspective is that access, right? Access is so key. A lot of the students that I know of are coming from really far, remote areas, and when the pandemic happened, they were living in the cities, right, where they could get internet. But then after when the pandemic happened, they had to go back home, and they really don't have access to internet, and that really gave them this sort of challenge to keep up with school and keep up with all the activities they were involved in.
Perfect timing, ended right on time. We are doing great. Okay, so our last formal question from me before we open it up to the audience for their questions and a more informal chat. So let's talk inclusion, and this will be for both of you, 5 minutes each. What challenges, as far as inclusion, what challenges are students facing during this pandemic? What are we learning from this? What can we do? And how do we move forward to support our teachers, our students, and our families? What will quality education look like for these countries that you and your students are engaging with? Thank you. Let's have Dr. Roll go first. Thank you.
Okay, I won't be long on this one. My perspective, and I will keep it brief. I want to talk about the facts and talk about what we actually know. There's a lot that has been done in the space of access and equity in the U.S., but the wealth gap in the U.S. is greater now than it was during the civil rights. Look at the data. We've looked at the data. The inequities are fueled by a lack of investments, home ownership, income disparities, and a lack of entrepreneurial pursuits. The richest men, and they are men in the world, were not at the top of the wealth chain 30, 40 years ago. They are in our lifetime. We saw they're investors, entrepreneurs, and innovators. So the playing field has never been equal. I see the topic of the seminar or the summit is how we can design an anti-racist future. Well, we never had one in this country. It's always been racist. So if you continue to do what we did before, how do you expect to get different results? So I'm gonna go back to this. So the hiring function. So when you start at the hiring or the hiring decision or the employment decision with underserved candidates, they could be in this country or in another country abroad, we are already behind. We don't have the same networks. We don't have the same access. We don't have the same anything. We're starting from a point of disadvantage. You heard Dr. Ramos talk about the students who just had to stop school. We at least can keep some of our students going because there are all kinds of remote ways, but in the other places, what is that going to do to that long-term career of those students? So now, what are we doing differently? Because I hate to keep talking about the problem. And when I heard the leader of the conference in his kickoff speak, he said, we go to conference and we talk about the problems all the time. So let's talk about some of the solutions that will be a little bit different. So we're here in New York, and I do say New York, we're working with a pilot with Mosaic. It's not that we are alone in the academy have recognized the problem. The industry has recognized the problem too. So Mosaic here in New York is going to start sharing their expertise, what they know, sharing their networks, and sharing their experience with a broad group of students long before an internship or a higher decision is being made. And so that gives the students a broad group of students. Not all of them will get internships, and not all of them will be mentored, but more of them will be impacted by how business is run and successful business folks. And so what I want to say is, what we did in the past, like saying we had internships and field experience and blah, 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 blah. None of it has yielded the kind of results that we wanted. Quite candidly, from a business perspective, to onboard a new hire, that's a very expensive proposition. But the revolving door is even a greater and more expensive proposition. So my take is we get more creative with our solutions. We have to see through multiple prisms. We can't be satisfied with just getting a few of our students through the door. We have to carry more to the success line. I say to the many recruiters that I see, anybody will take my top 1% or even my top 5%. But it's that good average student who will work harder, who has a family to take care of, parents to take care of, that needs a break. So it's not just the GPA. And I'm not saying GPA, it doesn't have a place, but I will tell you this. When we ran those boot camps to determine which students would have the opportunity to travel around the world, we didn't look at GPA. We measured their commitment and their passion to go above and beyond a greater graded experience. Could they sit through a week of intense study with their peers and come out on the other side pitching a business or innovation? Of the students that participated, there was 100% college graduation rate. About half of them went on to graduate school, and about 20% continued to operate and work their business. The underserved student doesn't have the luxury of the gift of complacency. They are hustlers. They have to be. They're survivors, and they want to thrive just like you and me. So if we change how we assess the problem, we will change the transformative process for new and better outcomes to leverage more of our diverse talent pools. And I think I'm right on time.
You are. Thank you so much, Dr. Roll. Wow. Okay, Dr. Ramos, it is.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I want to go back to some of the challenges, right? And again, I'm going to piggyback on what Dr. Roll said. A lot of the students that we're working with, especially in Global Tassels, they also have that family and community responsibilities. I remember back in 2015, we had selected and recruited a student from Delhi in India. And a year later, he was very much excited to go to school, but he had an opportunity, a job opportunity in Dubai, and he needed to quit the program, right? An opportunity that will bring in financial support to his family, right? And that is sort of like, do I continue my education or do I do this? He chose the latter, right? So in my mind, these are real situation, and that will impact the student's trajectory in terms of their interest to want to complete an education, and conflicting with their responsibility and the demand of the family of giving back to the family, right? Same situation we had with Cote d'Ivoire in Ivory Coast. We had a young lady that we selected, and a couple of months later, we found out that she needed to go to France, right? Because France will give her the opportunity to work, quit the program, right? Or at one point we were looking for her, So I think that those are the challenges that we, that we face. Like, although we're trying to create more programs like this, there are definitely other sort of natural and cultural demands that students are thinking about. And one of the things that I also wanted to say is that, in cases where we are working, right, the countries that I identified, India, Haiti, Colombia, Kenya, Philippines, and Guatemala, we found that the teachers, right, are really, really, committed to their jobs, right? They are doing this because, this is their career, and they want to be, of course, they want to keep their job, and they want to do well with it. And just like all of us, the teachers are really not just teachers, but they're becoming more like family members in a way for all of their students. So I just wanted to share that perspective that teachers in these cities, right, all the way from Nairobi to Bogota to Manila to Port-au-Prince, I think that the constant message and the constant observation that I have is that they're really helping our students, and the students need them. So one of the other thing that I want to bring up is the fact that, what can we do? I think for the most part, we try as much as we can to be in these countries, right? But traveling could get expensive, and really moving, to these countries could also get expensive, right? Nevertheless, I do feel that one thing that worked for us as an organization is that community partnership, that capacity building that happens on the ground. There are a lot of people that could help out in terms of connecting students to the workforce, and really trying to maneuver the educational journey of our students. Last that I want to bring up is that government and the way the system work in some of these countries often could be problematic to our students' future, right? For instance, in the Philippines, one of the things that I've observed is that the workforce are a very young workforce, right? From teenage to maybe I would say an average 26 years of age. Beyond that, unless you have like a professional career, right? And you have the proper education and everything else stuck up for you, you won't have the opportunity to really be in the workforce. So a lot of the individuals that I've been interviewing, and including some of my family who's living in dire communities, they don't often have stable jobs, or jobs that will give them sort of longevity for a couple of years. So I think all this is part of these nuances that you can't work in India and say that it's the same situation or the same challenge that it's going to happen or you're going to experience in Haiti, right? So you have to be flexible in terms of understanding the indicators of whether it's health, sustainability, or or the industry of the workforce. So I do think that all of that, anyone who's involved in study abroad, global programs, international development, I think we're all learning as government change, as as the generation emerge, new generation emerge in the educational space. And there's a lot of hope, but I do want to also echo what Jason Otley did say earlier too, is that you have to be in the front line in making sure that whoever you're supporting in those countries, you can't support everybody, but whoever you are supporting, you also have to be there to advocate for them, whether you are 5,000 miles away or you're there, standing next to them.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so now we will open up for questions, and I already see in the chat that there are 3 really great questions. Let me go ahead and read them, and then I guess we'll let either one of you, whoever would like to answer it can answer it. So the first question is from one of our viewers, and the question says, I was one of the youngest GS-13 for the government, and I managed Translator 250, and I was able to bring 41 million, not sure million what, but I'm maybe, I don't know, 41 million into an HBCU. And I want to know, do you think it will be more study abroad programs? I guess they're asking if study abroad programs may be the best way to go forward in this work.
So I'll answer that very quickly. And I believe in study abroad, right? My life changed when I started to move around the world and really meet people and be inspired with their story. And my life, my perspective and the way I see things and the way I understand it, I always wish I did study abroad when I was in college, but I didn't have the funding or nor the money or the capability to do that, right? So I took it upon myself to do that after I got my my graduate degrees. But I do feel that institutions, whether it's an HBCU or not, should invest in study abroad, right? Now, study abroad might change in the next couple of years, and I think it should. And one of the things that, students feel about the United States is that there's still this, sort of like glowing admiration for this country, right? Students that I'm working with, think about like, when can I go to the United States? At least experience that education, space in any of the colleges or university here. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is, when I was moving around back in 2014 to 2017, talking to different universities, I got sort of pushback, right, in regards to opening up more programs, maybe because of funding. And it's very hard for NGOs and nonprofits who have international programs, who's trying to build them up, to create partnerships with current institutions that already have their own quote unquote study abroad programs or scholarship initiatives. So I would say that, I actually would advocate for study abroad. I would pitch that leaders who are part of institutions that are listening in, including myself, right, that we really think about how impactful the exchange program, study abroad, and how much, greatness that could be for an experience of any of the students, whether students from here in the United States or the ones that are coming from outside of the country.
Thank you. Dr. Roll, would you like to add anything more to that? Oh, and you're muted, sorry.
No, except to say, if you're already out of school, your GS-13, the government has several programs. Fulbright is one of them, a vast array of programs where you could participate in study abroad-like activities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, a second question is, and I just see a new one too. Second question is, what do you feel is the biggest challenge for equity in education abroad? Is it too country dependent to say, or is there one thing that, if we focused on it as a global community, could have a more dramatic influence on equity in education abroad than others? Very nice question.
You want to go first, Dr. Ramos?
Sure. I would say, am I muted? No, I think I'm good. I would say that the biggest challenge in education abroad is sustainability, right? What do I mean by that? Sustainability with resources, I'm not just talking about materials that is needed for lectures or for any activities that has to do with teaching, but I'm talking about people, right? We are losing teachers, quality teachers, around the world, right? Because they're not getting paid. Same problems that we have here, right? They're not getting enough pay, and often some of these countries that I'm working with also do not have the flexibility in the way we might see flexible schedule, right? Because I know that there's still students going to school from 7 a.m. all the way to 5 p.m., right? So the way I really think that resources, teachers, right, keeping that together, the sustainability of that, and also the sustainability of the school. There are a lot of schools that are closing, right? There are, and I'm not just talking about colleges and universities, but I'm also talking about like daycare centers or elementary schools and even middle schools around the world. So I would say, like, there is this push that we could do more to help those schools and maybe help countries to build schools, right? You're hearing a lot of maybe your peers or a lot of our friends and family getting involved in building schools, right, in developing countries. I know there's a lot we're thinking about, or we've talked about in Haiti based on my experience. But I also know that English education is something that is somewhat what I'm hearing nowadays, right? How important that is in remote communities. When we first supported a young lady in Colombia, in Bogota, she was 275 miles away from the city. and in a village called Somondoko. And she did not at all, speak English when we first met her, but we invested on putting her in English school, in an English education school, and that really helped her, right? And her story inspired all the youth in her village now, and that is her project. So she goes back in there and she really mentors the youth and trying to really explain to them the importance of entrepreneurship, because the mayor and the elders of that village are pretty much, afraid, and they're feared that their youth is going to leave to go to, big cities, and they want to keep them there, right? They want them to have agricultural job there. They want them to have, local government jobs and small businesses. But at the same time, the way they could market themselves and the way they could do more beyond their village is to speak, a second language. And I know for sure that I believe it was last October, I got in touch with the mayor of Somondoko wanting to build an English school, right, in his village. So I think that's just, part of it. Again, is all of this. Sustainable communities and learning communities that I think we could all pitch in and be able to kind of help out in regards to answering that question.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Dr. Vol, would you like to add anything?
Well, I think he covered it very well. I just like to say the further they get behind, the harder it's going to be to catch up. The technology is pushing stuff so fast. And that's why everyone is talking about universal income, because that's the easy way out, rather than thinking through how do we scale up a large workforce that right now, like he mentioned, is so far behind. So it is a very big problem. He did a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah. There is one other question, but I do feel like you both have sort of covered it. I don't know if you want to add anything more about basically the question centers around what you have seen now, and both of you have told some compelling stories of students you actually worked with. But what kinds of things have you seen outside of the US, abroad, that have now or then, going forward, have influenced the way you do your work in education in the US? I don't know if you have anything more
I
that
have
you
one
would
more
add to that.
story. I do have one more story. The African Leadership University, they're doing something very, very innovative. It's in Rwanda, and what they do is, instead of having the sage on the stage and the lectures, they have a lot of peer-to-peer engagement, and they focus on entrepreneurship. And I think they have about 3 or 4 field study. So part of the time of the year, the students is on the campus, and the other part of the time of the year, they go back to the village, they go back to where they are, and they actually build businesses or innovations. So, just like Dr. Ramos said, a lot of the rural areas are losing their youth because there's not opportunity there. So they have this unique model where they're trying to develop the student, the new leaders, that's what they're calling them, so that they invest in where they came from through innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I find that fascinating. That's my last story.
That's wonderful. Dr. Ramos?
Sure, and I'll say this. That's a great question, actually. But one thing that I've learned, and also I'm still learning about it, is it's the idea of application, right? The doing part. I feel that there is a lot of that based on my observation, going to all these different places where the educational system could talk about the philosophical and the theories, but they do a lot more of the apply work. Not necessarily in school, but in their communities, right? So this whole concept of it takes a village, I mean, it is real, right? Students often and exposed to that. They're really in this tight knit of circle, and they do the work that, they practice the work and they practice the things that they're learning from the school into their community. So that's the same thing that I try to do, not just with me teaching and also being an academic administrator is, yeah, we could have conversations, but at the same time, at one point, we have to do the work, right? We have to apply the work, and that's really, you get so much out of that, and it's inspiring when you see, when you start seeing the seeds kind of having fruits later on, right?
Yes. So, we have 2 minutes remaining in our session, and I just want to do a little wrap up. And I just want to tell you both how very inspired I am personally by you. And I'm sure that everybody else who's listening is also similarly inspired. And we've covered a lot. You've talked about how, we can sort of be creative, right? And in thinking about what kind of partnerships are we setting up in our own institutions, and also actively engaging our students, right? So I love, Dr. Roll, that you shared, the models of schools that are doing a lot more peer-to-peer, education, and sort of peers helping spur each other's entrepreneurial impulses, right? And that, some of it is sort of like getting out of the way, right? And also we have to do things to sort of help as much as we can clear the barriers, right? And you've both definitely identified many barriers from not just our own institution, but government, and of course the wealth gap issue, right? The wealth disparity issue that Dr. Roll talked about, that's huge, right? And so, I think it's that combination, right, of us sort of really looking out for our students, listening to them. I hear you both doing that. I think you're both doing a lot of listening and sort of empowering students to take leadership, and that you're not the sage on the stage, telling the students what they need to do, right? You're sort of helping to guide. And I think that's such a wonderful, you're both such wonderful leaders and role models for all of us. And I certainly am looking forward to getting your book, Dr. Roll. I'd like to read that book. And Dr. Ramos and both of you, I will definitely be following what both of your organizations are doing. Again, I love how you have made it a good thing, right, for us in academia to think about entrepreneurship, that business is not separate from education, that there are things both institutions can learn and support each other in that work. So thank you so much for enabling me to be here with you and to be engaged in this conversation with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Chow.
Thank you. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our helpers behind the scenes too with the Equity Summit. This is a really wonderful conference, and I hope that we are adding something positive to it. I believe we are.